All right, welcome. Thanks for checking out the SRN Podcast. We are in our first episode right now, so let's go ahead and give you guys an idea of what we're going to be doing and covering here. So we're going to be going through the 2025 NASCAR season, the 2025 IMSA season. We're going to cover this year's eNASCAR. We're going to cover the Southern Racing Network iRacing League, and we're probably going to be picking up a few other leagues along the way that are on iRacing to give you some more sim content. So let's get started right now with NASCAR. Obviously, being January, we are in the off season, but the schedules are out and looking pretty interesting. Not too many changes in reality, but you know the Clash this year, February 2nd, so coming up in a couple weeks. That is at Bowman Gray, which I haven't been to yet, but I don't know if it's a big change, if it's going to make a big deal. You know, it's a small track. It's got to be better than the Coliseum, which that dang track is shaped like a football, and you can't pass in the corners at all. So, you know, and nobody wants to do anything with their car because they don't want to wreck it. You know what I mean? So they just ended up kind of parading around for however many laps they had, and it was kind of boring. I wouldn't expect this to be too much different, and that's just because of the competition level itself. They're just not going to do much. It's just to kind of parade around. But, you know, and then, of course, go to the Daytona 500, the Super Bowl of NASCAR, and that's where it all begins. They do have a change. However, early in the season, we usually see Las Vegas right up front. But they got Daytona 500 and then Atlanta. And for me, I think they did the same thing last year. And for me, it's kind of like upsetting that we go to two restrictor plate tracks back to back, and it's just kind of annoying because you don't really get an idea of who's strong, or you can't really build momentum when you're at a track that is essentially a crapshoot. You got to stay out of the big one. You got to not get caught up in the nonsense. So just kind of rough. And then we go straight to week 3. We go to the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, and that's a road course, and it's a very technical, very difficult road course as well. So that's kind of interesting. You know, that we're gonna see, you know, 2 restrictor plates and then straight to a road course. Not really a good idea of what happens in the season, or what's going to happen in the season, I should say. You're just going to kind of have to survive that whole section. And then, you know, we go to Phoenix, Las Vegas, Homestead, Martinsville, Darlington, Bristol. And it just is weird to me. Okay, Phoenix and Las Vegas, fine, you know. But then, you know, Homestead, shorter track. Martinsville, Darlington, Bristol, like, all short tracks, like a whole bunch of short tracks. So just kind of weird how they group those together. And then we go off week straight into Talladega, back to Super Speedway. Then you get into kind of some of the mile and a halves. So the summertime is full of mile and a halves. They're going to Mexico City in Cup, by the way, this year, somewhere in the summer there. So that's kind of interesting. And then once we get into the chase, it's really kind of, I don't know. I mean, we started Darlington, that's fine. Worldwide Tech, okay. And then Bristol, New Hampshire, Kansas, the Roval, Las Vegas, Talladega. I hate the fact that Talladega is in the playoffs. Drives me nuts. And then Martinsville and Phoenix, which is fine. So, interesting choices there. Interesting thing coming up. Of course, they're going to Watkins Glen also. They're going to Sonoma. Chicago Street Course is back. So they have quite a few. I want to say 5 or 6 if I count them up. Road courses that are just really, really different, you know. But that's what the league wants to be now. So that's what we're going to continue to see. So that's your Cup Series there. The schedule anyway. There's a couple of interesting things here in the news lately, and that is that JRM Junior Motorsports, that is going to try for the Daytona 500. They have the number 40 Travelers Whiskey. I think that that's going to be a good deal. I don't know how competitive they're going to be. I'd assume that they're getting some help from Hendrick, right? Because they're Chevy affiliates. Hendrick has grabbed a lot of his Xfinity drivers, and so I think they're going to get a lot of help from him. But I would not necessarily think that just because it's Junior Motorsports, it's going to be super competitive. You know, that's not necessarily or always the case when people try to just bring a car and they're not really in the series full time. So that'll be interesting to see if he can be competitive. But I'm pulling for it. You know what I mean? I've been waiting a long time for Junior to get into the Cup Series. He's tried several times. The biggest problem is that it's too expensive. To buy a charter is absolutely ridiculous. And so when Stuart Haas closed, he was looking at it, but the cost was just outrageous. And I think he said on his podcast he wished he had done it 10, 15 years ago, when they were not super expensive. But now they're way too much. And unfortunately, he hasn't been able to get in before. But we'll see if this is kind of the start of something new. Who knows? But we'll see. Martin Truex Jr. is going to try to start the 500 as well with Tricon. They are mainly a truck team, truck series team. That was a short retirement for him. Not that he's coming back full time, of course, but he is right back at the track. So that's good. Again, at Daytona, it's for him. It's for fun, right? It's a crapshoot. You don't know what's going to happen. You could get tied up in something real quick, or you could have a really good season. So you never really know. But wish him the best of luck, and we'll see how he does. RFK is adding a third car this year, the number 60 with Ryan Preece. So that'll be good. I mean, let's face it, Keselowski has brought a lot to that team. I don't know if he's the driver that he used to be, but he definitely brought some competitiveness back to that team. They used to not be very competitive, and now he's brought them kind of back, and we'll see how Preece does. I mean, having a third car is more data. It's going to be better information for the team, and so we'll see if that brings them back to the next level. Roush used to be a 4-car team, and they used to dominate. I mean, they were really good, but that was years ago, and they've done nothing. Roush has done nothing but sell parts of the team and downsize from 4 cars to 3 to 2. So this is going in the right direction for them. Also, Keselowski and his crew chief from Penske, Jeremy Bullins, are back together. So that might be something that helps them as well, or helps his personal performance. And he's a pretty knowledgeable guy, been around for a long time, so he might be able to help that team in general as well. So see how that turns out for RFK. In other news, Tubi is got a deal to stream live events and replays of NASCAR, so I'm curious to see how that's going to work out, because the schedule is so chopped up from TNT to Peacock to NBC, Fox Sports 1. There's another one I'm forgetting, I'm sure, but there's just so many different networks that are covering different chunks of the season, which bugs the hell out of me, because then you got to have every subscription under the sun just to be able to watch all the races. So I'm wondering, and it hasn't been announced yet that I can see, what Tubi is actually going to be covering, and even if they have the replay on Monday, I mean, I'd just watch it then, you know what I mean? Because that is a free service. So that should be interesting to see what we can catch there. That's about it that I saw this week for NASCAR. Obviously, there'll be more news coming out as we get to the Clash and as we get to the Daytona 500. There'll be a lot more stories and things coming out, so tune in for that. But Let's move on to IMSA. And this is, if you're not familiar, it's the GT3 class and GTD that tours around. They race once a month, essentially, is what they do. And they are not super popular yet in the United States, but definitely getting that way. And I believe that iRacing is helping that because it is one of the most popular series on iRacing. You can see at any given time there's a race that starts and there's going to be 300 to 400 people in certain hours and peak hours that are entering into a single race. So it's definitely taking off from a driver's standpoint, and from a spectator standpoint, it's doing a lot better as well. And most of these races are going to be televised. A lot of them are on Peacock, so you got to have the NBC paid streaming service. But you should be able to watch a lot of these. So we have starting right now this weekend is the Roar Before the 24. And we'll do some coverage on that in the next episode once that's done. But then you have the Rolex 24, obviously at Daytona. That's coming up next weekend, the 22nd through the 26th of January. That one is always popular, 24-hour grueling race that takes... And then we go on to Sebring. Now, we don't have a race in February. That is a month that they do take off. But then once we go to March, April, May, June, we have one race a month, and I think 2 in May. But anyways, there's some interesting tracks here. There's the 12-hour at Sebring that is after Daytona. So those are kind of the longer races. Some of them are a lot shorter, but the longer races are always fun because you have multiple drivers, and you can tell that some drivers are faster, some are slower on the same team. How they use them, when do they put them in, is a fun strategy game to watch. Then we go after that to Long Beach. Long Beach is only a 100-minute race, so definitely a shorter one. And that one, that track is just, to me, very difficult. Very closed-in track surface, walls everywhere, so you can't have any sort of off track, or you will damage your car. And then the hairpin coming into the last corner is mildly undrivable. It can't be side by side at all. You're turning a complete 180, on a dime. So very technical, difficult track. That should be fun. Obviously, the next one that we have at Laguna Seca is a very popular track. I think everybody knows about that one. They're doing the Detroit Grand Prix this year, the Detroit Street Circuit. So kind of like NASCAR does the, the Chicago Street Course. They're going to be doing the Detroit. And so that's interesting. I don't remember watching that one last year, so I'll definitely be tuning in for that. Another popular one on iRacing is the Watkins Glen, the 6-hour of the Glen. That's a hugely popular race in iRacing, and that'll be fun to watch and to participate in if you're an iRacer. That's a 6-hour race, obviously, 6 hours of the Glen. And you can do that with 2 drivers pretty easy. So we'll see what these teams do. Next after that, we got the Canadian Tire. That's a fun track. Not too technical, so you can just kind of ride. Rounding out the season is the Petite Le Mans. That's always a crowd pleaser. Popular on iRacing and a good track to race. A little bit technical, some big straightaways, so you have to have good top speed and you have to have good cornering, and that makes it very difficult for trying to set it up. So that's kind of what's going on in the schedule. As far as the series itself, like I said, it's taken off pretty good. It's getting popular. Last year, Ford entered it with their Mustang, and that was I would say a good season for them, being right out of the gate. It was not any wins or anything like that, but had some good finishes, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they're going to be able to do next year, because I think that if you if you look at what they did last year and the progress that they made from their first race to their last race, they definitely were able to figure some things out. And so now they have the off season. They go back to the garage. They do a bunch of testing. They change some things around, and I really think that it's gonna improve. And I'm looking forward to that. Being a Ford guy myself, of course, I want to see the Fords do well. But there's a bunch of other teams that are established there, and they're gonna have to be able to compete with them. So that'll be fun to watch, and we'll figure out what happens along the way. The next series that we're going to be covering is the NASCAR Coca-Cola series. And this is, if you're not familiar, an iRacing series that has a lot of professional drivers as team owners as well. And they do races every 2 weeks or so, with some exceptions, but about every 2 weeks they run a race, and they are doing nothing leading up to, like, they don't have a clash or anything like that, but they do have the Daytona Speedway is what's going to start their season. Then they go to Las Vegas, and then they go to Autodromo Jose Carlos Pace. So that is an interesting one. That's one that I don't think NASCAR has been to, but they're going to make those Coke drivers do that, and that should be pretty interesting and fun to watch. They're going to need to get some practice there for sure. Then we move on to a couple short tracks with Richmond and Rockingham. Then we go all the way back to Talladega, Charlotte, Nashville Speedway. So they have a lot of the normal courses. Then they go to Chicago, and I think Chicago's the same week as Chicago and NASCAR, probably so those boys can practice. But that's a tough course in iRacing too, very slick, and I don't know if that transfers into the real world, but it is very, very slick, no grip in that one. Other than that, just a bunch of 1.5 miles that they run, so nothing else is kind of crazy about the tracks, but always a fun series to watch. So we'll be covering that in more depth and get into the kind of teams and who's doing what and how it's all working out. So looking forward to that once that gets started. Moving on to the iRacing series. So the Southern Racing Network just started their season 2 weeks ago. They had the Daytona to open up the season, just like a lot of series do. This series is going to run for about 6 months and has 20 races in it. I think there's 3 to 4 off weeks in between there for holidays and whatnot, so the guys can take a break and be with their families. We had, at Daytona, we had Alex Healy got the win there. Bobby Hall Jr. takes second, and Bobby Grady took third. And those guys all did a great job. A bunch of other drivers did great too. But, a few things happened, some accidents, and as Daytona does, right? And so it was a good race overall, not too many cautions. There was different conditions. There was an update not too long ago in iRacing, and those trucks, got really hot really fast. If you were on that bumper in front of you, there was no way that you could stay there without trying to get your front bumper out, get some air. And every time you did that, it got very uncomfortable on the aero. I don't know if it was the rear spoiler catching air or if it was the front itself. I really couldn't tell you, but it made it so that it got really wobbly. And so you could see during the race, every time somebody kind of peeked out, just kind of got really wobbly. And what happened was that created kind of the accordion effect through the pack, where one guy gets a little wobbly, a little slowed down, and next thing you know, it's kind of accordion back. This guy's got to slow down. Now this guy's got to slow down, and by the time he gets 4 or 5 cars deep, it's not just a little slowdown anymore. People are bumping into each other, so it really was strange conditions out there, and I don't know if iRacing is going to address that or do anything with it. It just seemed like it was a little uncomfortable, a little loose, hard to control. And maybe that's the way they want it, you know. I don't know. I'm not in the development team over there, so I don't know what it was. But if that's the way it's going to be hard to race Daytona. Talladega obviously different because it's a lot wider, so you can get away with a little bit more. But that is going to be it's gonna be tough. So we're gonna have to keep an eye out for that. So, but in all, good race. A lot of good guys out there. We did catch up earlier in the week with Bobby. Let's take a look at that interview we had. We're with our Week 2 Las Vegas winner in the SRN Wednesday Night Truck Series. How are you doing tonight, Bobby Hall Jr.?
Oh, pretty good. Just staying warm and staying out of the snow.
Yep, you got a lot of that going on around the country. So let's talk. I'm sorry, that was the wrong interview. Alex Healy is the one who won at Daytona, so let's put his interview. All right, we are here with our Southern Racing Network Wednesday Night Truck Series Week 1 winner from Daytona. How you doing, Alex Healy?
Man, I'm doing great, Matthew. How are you doing tonight, man?
Doing pretty good. Hey, you had a strong run. You stayed up front most of the night there at Daytona. I know it was pretty hectic behind you a little bit, but tell us kind of how it felt out there and what it was like from your seat.
Yeah, so I talked about this a little bit in my post-race, but traditionally in my time on iRacing, I've found myself at the front at race pretty often. Very rarely have I actually cashed a check there. That was the second super speedway race I've won in my entire time on iRacing. The other time was some goofy official race at iRacing Super Speedway that was a wreck fest. So being out there, which having my teammates there and having that communication helped out a ton. We're trying to, all kind of work together and get positioned there towards the end, and really only had Bobby up there with me at the end. Got out to a good kind of healthy lead there on the last restart, and I was feeling pretty comfortable. I was kind of able to, I wasn't really bouncing back and forth between lanes, but just showing my bumper at times to maybe hinder guys from taking a shot when they had a run or something like that.
Yeah, trying to go in that middle lane or going 3 wide, you gotta show them that bumper and deter that behavior.
Yeah, for sure, because more so at Daytona than Talladega. Like, if you run around Daytona 3 wide, like, bad things are going to happen pretty quickly my experience. Which luckily we didn't end up in that situation. But, got out front and kind of drag race to the finish with Bobby. And then we had I won't call it controversy, but I was involved in an incident earlier in the race, and it was kind of rough and tumble at times, and I was cruising around with 14X for, I don't know, 20 or 30 laps, and at super speedways, when you get X's, it's typically not a lot you can do about it. It's just super speedway racing, and not.
Yeah, they're going to happen. There's not a lot you can do about it. Not a lot of them are your fault, but you end up racking them up regardless, because that's super speedway racing. Now the bump from behind that you got was hard, and it was, hey, we're coming to the checkers, so it's understandable. Was that your teammate, or was your teammate? I thought he was beside you.
Yeah, Bobby was beside me.
Yeah.
Gosh, I can't remember the guy's name that was behind me. I want to say it was the 46 truck, maybe Baldwin.
No, that's Chris Barker.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's who it was. Yeah. So he pushed you hard because, well, you're 2x2. He had a car that he's trying to get third, not fourth, right? So he's like, I got momentum. I got to go through you.
Yeah, and, best case for him is if he can get me a little loose or something, maybe he's able to sneak on by there. And
Yeah.
from where I'm sitting, like it'd be frustrating, but I wouldn't blame him for making that move because there's only so much you can do
You definitely
coming to
have to
the
make a
stripe when
move,
you're two by two.
going at the end, and I'm like you. I've done a lot of restrictor plate racing, you know what I mean. But I haven't done a lot of winning, and I think I've done it once in an official, and it's just because you're just jockeying, and you could be up there in the top four, and it's just it's timing and who's got the momentum, and so you can have one of the best cars out there, but it's still a crapshoot.
Yeah, and you jump out at the wrong time and you end up in the middle and nobody's gone with you and you go from first to 20th in 15 seconds, and there's nothing you can do, but you can be the greatest driver on the planet. There's nothing you can do to overcome that if you jump out at the wrong time.
Yeah, and it happens real quick, and I think it happened. I want to say Matt Grainer. No, who was that? It happened
There
later in the race to somebody, and they just
Yep.
dropped like a stone. And it's like, oh no. And I felt bad for him. I was out by that point, but I felt bad for him because I've been there, man, and it's a terrible feeling. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, you just got to hang on and hope you don't get wrecked, getting shuffled around, and get back in line as soon as you can, and
Yep.
try to work from there. But obviously at the end of the race, there's not a lot of time. So fortunately, I I was playing it pretty conservative, and it worked out for me for the first time in a long time. So no
Yeah.
complaints. Felt pretty cool to win a super speedway race. Like I said, I don't do that very often.
Yeah. Feels good to win any race, but at super speedways, it's like, you feel like you dodged a bullet and you came out on top.
Yeah, and for sure, and
Yeah.
and to be the first race with this group, it's kind of our version of the Daytona 500 that kind of sets the tone a little bit for the rest of the season, which obviously super speedway success doesn't necessarily translate over to other tracks by any means, but it gives you a little bit of confidence going into the next week for sure.
Yeah, and it gives you some cushion over the guys that maybe had some issues, right? Because there's some strong drivers that had problems, and so now you're starting off with a little bit of a cushion over those guys, and that always feels good. But the momentum from week one did carry over into week two because in Las Vegas you ended up finishing P3, and you had a strong truck all day. So tell us a little bit about that race, and that was way different. Lots of green flag, real greasy track. You had to save tires. Just completely different race. But tell us from your standpoint how that went.
Yeah, so I was actually more confident entering Las Vegas than Super Speedway. I like the mile and a halfs. Las Vegas is always a fun track. It's wide. It gives you a lot of options. When you're on good tires, you can run around the bottom and really make time there. And as your tires wear in, you can move up the track and generate some runs on the top side. Like you said, though, the track was super greasy, so grip went away quickly, and it was a lot of worrying about tire conservation and just trying not to make any mistakes that put you in a bad spot. Which I actually did have some bad luck. It was about lap 20 or so. I think I was racing for fourth or fifth or something like that, and 38 truck was inside me and had a pretty good run. He was on the bottom, and
Hmm.
on the exit of turn two, he kind of I don't know if he got loose or maybe lost the front end a little bit, but just barely clipped my quarter panel, and I might have overcorrected a little bit and slammed it into the wall. At that point, I was just limping around the track and gave me about, I don't know, 25 seconds to figure out, am I going to use the fast repair here? Is there going to be a bunch of cautions and I need to save that thing for later? And I kind of panicked and just took the fast repair, which the way the race went, like you said, not. I think we just had the one caution towards the end of the race, so it ended up working out for me. It got me on a different pit cycle than everybody else, which if we had gone green the entire way, I kind of think it would have worked out better for me. But at the same time, I'm not going to complain after having a little bit of chaos and still securing the third place. It made it interesting at times because it was pretty much just me, and I think there was one other guy where basically we were pitting 15 laps or so before everybody else. So we'd come and pit and come out in last place, and tires made such a huge difference basically by the time people on the normal schedule were pitting, I was either in first place or quickly approaching it, and then they'd come out of the pits, and then 15 laps later, when I'm getting ready to pit, those guys are back passing me for first
Zooming
place
by.
again. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
There was a lot of leapfrog out there for sure. It was back and forth in different strategies, and I think you're right. If we would have been able to keep it green, I think you having to kind of short pit a little bit more than everyone else was trying, I think that may have played into your hand, because we did have, an extra set of tires than what we really needed, which of course at that point you probably would have needed that fourth set, but you would have you would have had some freshies there with like 20 to go, and I think that could have definitely played out better. But given the fact that you were in that, and that was for third and fourth, by the way, I was in fifth right behind it, and
Okay.
and I saw it happen, and I had to kind of part the seas, and but yeah, for having that happen, and it wasn't your fault, by the way. And I'm not sure if it was a 38 or not, but we'll leave that
Yeah.
alone. But
Yeah.
but the fact is like having that happen, having that long green flag run was very good for you, and I mean a third place finish after that. Normal tracks, normal conditions, if you have a long green flag run like that, and you've had an accident, even if you got a fast repair, you're still behind the eight ball. You know what I mean? And
For
so
sure.
to be able to get that green flag and have that cycle work out, I mean, it worked out well. But I mean, you drove a heck of a race. You had the fastest lap in the race. So I'm assuming, and I should have looked, but I'm going to guess it was probably a little bit after that accident happened and you were kind of on it a little harder.
It was actually, I did go and look. It was actually on the third lap of the race.
Oh,
I
really?
don't, yeah, I don't know.
So as soon as you
I,
got some grip, you used it.
yeah, I guess so. I was on the loud pedal.
Yeah, I got you. All right. That's good. I just know for myself as a driver, whenever I have something like that, I'm driving a little recklessly afterwards, If I know
For
I got to
sure.
save tires, I'm like, I don't care anymore. This is stupid. What am I doing here?
Yep, for sure. 100%.
So, well, tell me, in the weeks coming forward, is there any, we're going Iowa, Nashville Super Speedway, Indianapolis, Dover, a whole bunch of different types of tracks. What are you looking forward to? Where do you think you're going to be strong at?
So there's a few that I really like. Which one of them is more towards the middle of the season? My most successful track that I have on the service is Pocono. Um, and the last couple leagues that I've been in, I think I've won the past three Pocono races I've been in. Funny enough, the league I was in last year, which I ran, I had some of the guys from Flex and some of the other guys that have joined were racing with me in that league. We before the race, I was just kind of talking a little trash, and people were giving me a little bit of hard time about Pocono. I was like, look guys, if I win this race tonight, I'm gonna get Pocono tattooed on my right bicep, and there's
Oh,
nothing you guys can
no.
do to stop me. I'll post the picture in the Discord. I've got the Pocono outline. I've got my number 97 on it, the whole deal. So without going too crazy, Pocono is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I haven't ran a ton at Indianapolis on the oval, but it's kind of similar to Pocono, so I've taken a liking to it. Dover is a place where I feel really competitive, but things can get crazy there just because it's really high speed, really close quarters.
Yeah.
It is a fun track. The mile and a halves are always cool. Kansas especially I like a lot.
Hmm.
Let's see. Auto Club is another awesome one. Not looking forward to Phoenix. I hate that place, but if it's a championship race or down, that's how it goes. So
Well, if
we'll
you're in the hunt and it comes down to it, you're gonna have to get some extra practice
Yeah,
in because
I
it's
know it,
it's the
man.
last race of the season. So, And
Yeah.
that's kind of why that curveball was thrown in there, just because it's season one. Let's see if we can shake it up a little, you know.
Yeah.
So I agree with you that Indianapolis. I mean, every corner there is pretty much turned to in Pocono with a little bit more
Yep.
degree, and so but
For
doing them
sure.
back to back changes everything, and so Indianapolis is going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, I think it's a good season coming up. Let's let me give you the floor here if you wanna tell us a little bit about yourself, talk about your team, your sponsors that you guys might have, anything you wanna let the world know.
Yeah. So just for the guys in the league that I haven't had a chance to talk to yet or anything, tell you guys a little bit about myself. Um, I've been a car guy my entire life. Since I graduated college, I've worked in the automotive performance industry. Worked 7 years at a company a lot of people are probably familiar with, Holly Performance Products. You
Hmm.
know, carburetors, fuel systems, the whole nine. Spent a lot of time there. Worked at Brian Tooley Racing. They're big in camshafts and valve train for LS cars. And I left Holly at the end of last year and went to the competition, Race Winning Brands, which they own some brands you guys are, some people are probably familiar with, Dart machinery like Dart heads and blocks, Wiseco pistons, JE pistons, Manley, Haltech, all kinds of stuff. So I've lived and breathed cars my entire life. Um, I was big in drag racing for probably 15 years. I ran a turbo drag radial car. So did a lot with that. And in the last couple years, I've found out that turning while going fast is so much more fun. Which I'm located here in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and we have the National Corvette Museum Motorsports Park here, which is it's a 3+ mile road course. I've got a C5 Z06 that I go and turn laps on track days out there. So, working on making that thing faster and more of a track weapon than a fun street car, stuff like that. Outside of that stuff, spent 7 years in the Kentucky Army National Guard. Went over to Iraq in 2011, did all that cool guy stuff. So even when I was in the Army, though, I was a mechanic, so I was working on diesel trucks all the time. Can't get away from it. Um, but that's kind of little background on me. As far as the team and everything, um, I met the Flex Motorsports guys in a league that we ran in several years ago. My first season in it, I didn't have any teammates, and I had some success. I won a Pocono race, but on some of the bigger tracks, not having teammates was made things difficult for me. So the next season, I was searching for a team, and I'd crossed paths with the Flex guys a few times, and Dan Worthington reached out to me and said there was a spot on the team if I wanted to be a part of it. So we've been racing together ever since then. Me and Dan and Bobby Hall, Wes Wigand, and Tom Hall's there, Dakota Shepard. They're all there pretty much full time. And then we had a couple more guys. I got signed up last week. Matt Grenier, which I'm sure everyone's going to say his name, Grenier, because I said it like
Hmm.
that for a long time.
I think I already
But
did once, didn't I?
yeah, I probably, because that's I think I probably said it like that for a year until I started talking to him, and he corrected me. It's actually Grenier, but he is up in the Northeast too. So he runs with us, and I haven't really considered him a teammate, but I've raced with Ronnie Shirk in the last couple leagues as well. After I won that first race, I shared a post, and then some of the guys I used to race with commented on it. So I gave them the deets, and a couple of them showed up over here. All good guys, super clean to race with. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
all around good group of guys. The flex guys, sometimes you got to watch them. You might notice old Wes likes to key up and maybe voice a little frustration every now and again. And in our team chat, I got to be like, Wes, you got to shut up, man. just focus on the race. We'll
Yeah.
deal with that stuff afterwards. Happened to me.
Yeah.
It's happened to you, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes temper gets the best of you.
Sure. It happens. Yeah. Well, very good, man. Good talking with you. Looking forward to seeing you in Iowa on Wednesday. Good luck out there, and we'll see you later.
Yeah, I appreciate it a ton. Got to get some practice in. I was not one of my stronger tracks, so I got to turn some laps this weekend.
All right. So that was Alex Healy after his win in Daytona. Moving on to week 2 in Vegas. Out there we had Alex Healy actually took third there. Chris Barker takes second. Bobby Hall Jr. was first. That was an interesting race there. It was very warm. Ambient temperature was about 75, but the track temperature was 130, and it was greasy, slick. It was wild out there. The cars were losing, a second a lap within the first 10 laps, and it was hard to hold on to tires. It was hard to hold on to the car off of 2 and 4, and it was a very challenging race that made drivers really work, and you could tell who was the best and who could hold the tires and use that strategy. So, like I said, Bobby Hall took the win, and I got a chance to catch up with him in an interview earlier this week. So let's take a look at that. All right, we're with our Week 2 Las Vegas winner in the SRN Wednesday Night Truck Series. How are you doing tonight, Bobby Hall Jr.?
Oh, pretty good. Just staying warm and staying out of the snow.
Yep, you got a lot of that going on around the country. So let's talk about Vegas first. So he won that race. He looked pretty commanding there. Didn't have any issues. Looks like after a few laps, you could kind of pull away from guys, taking care of tires better. Tell us about the strategy and how it played out.
Yeah, it was definitely a tire game. After 15, 20 laps, the tires seemed to fall off pretty quick. I just learned to lift and roll the center lap after lap, and it seemed to help, 15, 20 laps in. And, I thought it was a good day for me and the team.
It was definitely a good day. It looked like at some point there, especially when we started getting a couple cautions, that Chris Barker in the 46 might have something for you. But again, at that end, you pulled away. Did at any point, I know you guys were racing pretty close there for a little while. Were you just kind of keeping it cool and sticking to your line, or were you guys racing hard, or how were you approaching that?
Well, the first stint of the race when he was out front, I was just watching how his drive line, and then when I got around him, he seemed to run the middle of the high line, and I tried it a couple times later in the race when he got close, and I clipped the wall a couple times, and I said, nah, I'm just gonna stick to my line.
Yeah, got to get away from that. Stick to what's working, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Especially 3 and 4. Especially 3 and 4.
Yeah, yep. It seems like that was the hardest corner. You could always roll into 1, but 3 and 4 is always a little tighter. But you played it out well. That's a good race for you. Let's go back to week 1, Daytona, second place finish. So you got 2 good finishes there. Daytona was a little bit more wild. How did that race play out for you?
Yeah, my teammate Alex Healy won the race, but then at the stripe, he got bumped from the rear, and it gave him too many incident points, which dropped him last on a lead lap. And I'm like, oh, shoot. So we were trying to deliberate, if it's going to stay or if it's going to stand. And a part of me wishes it didn't stay, and I would have got it. But then, if I was in the same shoes, I would be protesting that no fault on my end. So, congrats on Alex on opener for SRN League. And
yeah, I feel like that was the deciding factor. Is if that had happened in 10th or 12th, it would have been one thing. But happening for the win, just you can't take a checkered flag away from somebody for that. You know what I mean? So ultimately, as a race owner or a league owner, you gotta make those tough decisions sometimes, and that one had to be made. But it was a great race by you, and your team worked well together.
Yeah, if it was like out of turn 2 and he got bumped and penalized, maybe the outcome would have been different. But like I said, bump drafting at the speedways, you got to take it with a grain of salt.
Yep. Well, and you know, you're starting the season 2-1, and that's really strong in any league. And so, tell us about going forward in the series. Any tracks you're looking forward to? I mean, you got to be feeling strong and confident at this point.
Looking at the schedule, you know, we got a lot of mile and a halves. You know, a couple short tracks I don't usually like. You know, Dover I know is a tire eater for sure for concrete, and we got Bristol and Martinsville a couple weeks apart from each other, so that's going to be some layback, watch the racing happen, I should say.
Yep.
I feel good on the schedule. It's just staying positive, you know, trying to stay out of wrecks, you know, and I think that's going to be key for the first third of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the short tracks, you know, a great strategy on those for anybody is just run the first half safe. You know, don't let anybody take you out. People are going to make their mistakes, and then you kind of see where the dust settles and who the competition is.
Yes, that is a true statement on that.
Yeah. So, tell us, okay, before we let you go, tell us about your team. Who's your team? Who's on it? Any sponsors you guys got? Shout outs you want to do? Go ahead. The floor is yours.
10 of the number 113 is kind of the owner of the team, shall we say.
All right.
Wes Wiegand, the number 88 truck. Dakota Shepard in the 101 truck. Me in the 94. My cousin Tommy in the 93. My other cousin, if he can stick it out, in the 27. We got Matt Grenier that came aboard last week in the 15. Most of us been racing together for the last 4 years or so. And you know, it's a nice group of guys. We're trying to broaden the horizon a little bit more here and there, because it's nice to have teammates to bounce your ideas when it comes to racing.
Absolutely. You got a big team there too. So is that 5 or 6 people?
Well, the
5.5
group. Yeah, 'cause the core group is Dan, Wes, Dakota, and me. That's the core.
Yeah.
And then Alex Healy he came in a year or so ago, and then you know Matt Grenier is a friend of Alex, and then my cousin jumped in, and who knows? Maybe we'll try to get some more people in, and we'll try to get a 40-car field for one night.
That would be crazy. We'll have to kick some out, so then we'll have to be qualifying in. But that would be fun. You know, make it a little interesting.
Heck yeah.
All right, let's talk about sponsors. You guys got anybody on board with y'all you want to mention?
For my truck in the 94, it's Earl Shop. I kind of do a little painting here and there on the iRacing. My real life car is Earl Shop. My cousin's opened a vinyl T-shirt printing thing. Team Flex, of course, me and the team. Mm-hmm. Usually, you know, that's really all I have for sponsors.
Okay. And that Earl Shop, do you guys do paint for other people on iRacing?
I have. If somebody's reached out to me and said, hey, you know, I'm trying to do something like this, you know, I'll try to find it and do it for them. I just try to help out, you know, versus these $50, $60 paint schemes that people charge. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yep.
And I know the team has their, you know, individual people or products that they use, shall we say. And you know, just a average racer.
Very good. All right. Well, I think that's all I got for you. Let's say this. Congratulations on the start to the season. Obviously very good, going 2-1. Looking forward to seeing what you and Flex can do the rest of this season. I think you guys are going to be strong, and good luck the rest of the way.
Why, thank you. The biggest thing is testing, you know, the week or so prior to Wednesday, just so we know what we can and cannot do. You know, that seems to help a lot of people. And if people want to host practice sessions, you know, more welcome to, and join in and give some suggestions if I watch people. You know, I'm a open book for the most part.
Yes, sir. All right, very good. We'll see you along the way. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you, and hopefully I'll be on here again in a couple weeks.
All right. again, that was Bobby Hall from his win in Las Vegas. Next week, we are going to be in Iowa. That should be an interesting race. That is Wednesday the 22nd at 7:30 Stream Sim TV on YouTube. So please check that out. Season standings is Bobby Hall is actually leading. Alex Healy is in second. Chris Barker is in third. Dan Worthington is in fourth. And Bobby Grady is in fifth. And that's your top 5 for the season. 2 races in. Obviously, anything can happen. A lot can change, and we'll be covering all of it in the weeks to come. Thanks for joining us, and y'all have a